Hey guys, it's Andrew from Seemu. In this tutorial, we're going to look at a UI page view controller that will also have dots to indicate what page you're on. So let's get right into it. Alright, so let's get into setting up our page view controller. First of all, we need to go over to our main.storyboard, and in the Object Explorer, we need to search for page view controller. Set that above the default view controller. Next up, drag this arrow. So the default view controller that the app starts off on is the page view controller. And then we want to search for another view controller. Let's drag that onto our storyboard. Okay, so the first view controller, select the view. And then in the attributes inspector, we're going to set the background color to be red. And the second one, we'll set the background color to be blue so we can differentiate between our pages in our page view controller. What we need to do next is first of all select the red view controller, and we'll want to go to the identity inspector, and for the storyboard ID we're going to set it to SB red, so SB for storyboard and red for the color, and we'll do the same one for the blue view controller, so identity SB blue. And this is going to be used later to identify between the two different ones and load them up into our page view controller. Now next, select the page view controller, and under the attributes inspector, we're going to change the navigation to be a scroll instead of a page curl. And that's going to allow you to scroll through the different view controllers we have. Now it's time to set up our page view controller code. So to do that, we'll go File, New File, go Coca Touch class, go Next. The subclass of, we need to change that to UI page view controller, and we are going to name the class page view controller. Go Next, go Create. Once you've created that, go back to the storyboard, go to our page view controller, and under the identity inspector in the top right, we need to change a class to the custom class we created, page view controller. So this page view controller will run the code in that page view controller class we just created. So what we need to do after the class page view controller, we need to add the UI page view controller delegate and UI page view controller data source. Now that's going to have an error which we'll get rid of soon. So first of all, under view deload, we're going to create a new function called func new VC for new view controller. This is going to take in a view controller variable as a string, and this function is going to output a UI view controller, and in this we'll do return UI storyboard. The name will be main, bundle will be nil, and we'll do dot instantiate view controller with identifier. And the identifier is going to be the view controller identifier we pass into this function here. And you'll see where this gets used later. Next up, above view deload, we're going to create a new lazy variable called ordered view controllers. And this is going to contain an array of UI view controllers. And this array we'll do equals curly brackets, and we'll return. We'll start the array. The first one will be self.new VC. In the brackets, we'll pass the view controller. And the first one is going to be SB red. And the next one under that, we'll copy that. And instead, this will be SB blue for storyboard blue. Close this off with some additional curly brackets, Now you'll remember in the storyboard, with the red and blue view controllers, we created an SB red and SB blue story identifier. So this is how it's going to know to load up the correct view controllers when you're scrolling through the different pages. Now we need to add some functions in order for the view controllers to work with a page view controller, and that will get rid of this error up here. So that's quite simple. First we need to go function page view controller. And in this we want the one function here which has page view controller, and it'll have view controller before here. And what we need to do in here, we'll go guard let view controller index equals ordered view controllers dot index, and in the index will be of, and UI view controller is going to be the view controller. And in this guard we'll do else, and if it fails do return nil. Next up we'll do let previous index equals view controller index -1. Do guard previous index is greater than or equal to 0. Else we'll return ordered view controllers dot last. Next up we'll do guard ordered view controllers dot count is greater than previous index. We'll do else return nil. Otherwise we'll return ordered view controllers and we'll return the position the previous index. Okay, and in this guard previous index, make sure the 0 has a space after the greater to and equal than. And after this function, we need to add a new function called funcs page view controller. And this one's going to be very similar to the previous function. However, it's going to be the page view controller after instead of view controller before. So we want to copy this code into that function, and we just need to change a few things. So first of all, we'll change previous index to next index, and that's going to be equals to view controller index +1. Now in this guard, we're going to replace this guard statement with guard ordered view controllers dot count is not equal to next index. Otherwise we'll return ordered view controllers dot first. And in the next guard we're going to change this to guard ordered view controllers dot count is greater than next index. Otherwise that will return nil. Otherwise, we'll return ordered view controllers next index. Now finally, in the view did load, we need to add self.dataSource equals self, and we need to do let first view controller equals ordered view controllers dot first, and in here we'll run set view controllers, and in the set view controllers we're going to add the first view controller as an array object. Direction will be dot forward, animated as true, and completion as nil. So you might want to put these different parameters on new lines so it's a bit easier to read in your Swift code. And in this let view controller, it needs to be if let. Otherwise we can't use a variable within the function here for first view controller. Okay, just quickly our app crashed, and the reason is in this new view controller function, this storyboard name started with a lowercase m. When you can see here, it's actually started with an uppercase M. So just note when you're coding, some things are case sensitive, and if you get them wrong, your app can crash or have strange behavior. So that's something to keep in mind when coding. It's something quite simple to miss. So it will happen. Sometimes the app will crash, and other times it might exhibit strange behavior. So now that I've fixed that up, you can see our app running here with our red view controller, the blue view controller, and we can scroll back and forth through them all. So that's how you create a page view controller. Now I'm going to explain the code and also add some dots down the bottom to indicate what page you're on. So how the code is working is this lazy ordered view controllers is storing our page view controllers. A lazy variable isn't initialized straight away until it's actually used, and you can see more on the Seemu app's lazy var tutorial. In view did load, if we can set the first view controller from the ordered view controllers dot first, which is the first item, it will call this function here, which will set the view controllers for our page view. And it will pass in the first view controller, which is the first view controller to show, which is our storyboard red item here. The direction is forward, so the next one to the right will be blue. Animated is true, is it will show an animation as we're swiping through. And the completion handler we have set to nil, but if you wanted to run some code every time the user swapped the page, that's where you would set it. Next of all, the new VC function. This returns a view controller from our main storyboard with the identifier view controller that's passed in as a string. So up here we have storyboard red and storyboard blue. That gets passed into this function and returns a UI view controller. And next of all, we have these two page view controllers here, which is a view controller before and view controller after. So what each of these functions do is a view controller before returns the view controller before the current one. So behind, when you're swiping to the left side. So by left side, what I mean is swiping to the left like this. View controller after returns the next view controller. So when you're moving on to the next one and swiping to the right like follows. And we have to be very careful in these functions. So first of all, we check if we can get the view controller index of the current view controller. Otherwise, we return nil because it's going to crash and not doing anything. The next one in the view controller before function, we get the previous index of the view controller index, which is a number. Next up, we check if the previous index is greater than or equal to 0, because if it's below 0, it means we would have went outside the bounds of this ordered view controls array. And if so, we're just going to return the last view controller. What that does, it makes it so you can just infinitely swipe through them. If you don't want to allow the user to be able to swipe through them non-stop, we return nil here instead of ordered view controllers dot last. And you would also return nil in the ordered view controllers dot first in the view controller after function. So I'll show you that in a moment. And going on with the rest of the code, we check that the count of the view controllers, if it's greater than the previous index, we'll continue on and return the previous index. Otherwise, we return nil since there's no possible view controller there. And it's a similar story for the view controller after function. Essentially, what it's doing is the same as the previous, except for the next view controller in this ordered view controllers array. So it basically has checks to make sure, do we have a view controller at the next index in the array? If not, return the first or last one. Otherwise, we can change it to return nil, which I've just done here. which will stop the view controller from being able to loop through an infinite number of times. So we can see here now I can't scroll past the blue one. If I scroll back to the red one, I can't scroll to the edge. So that's how you stop being able to scroll through infinity times. I'm going to comment out those return nil and change it back to scrolling through infinity times. Now finally, let's add the page dot indicators down the bottom to indicate what page you're on and how many pages there are. So above view load, we're going to add a new variable called var page control equals UI page control. And we'll add a new function called function configure page control. And in this, we'll do page control equals UI page control. We'll set the frame as a CG rect. And we'll set the X to be 0, the Y to be UI screen dot main dot bounds dot max Y minus 50. We'll set the width to be UI screen dot main dot bounds dot width, and the height will set to be 50. So this is placing the page control at the bottom of our screen, 50 points above the bottom, the width to the full width, and the height to 50. Then we need to do page control the number of pages, and that's going to be equal to the ordered view controllers dot count. So how many items are in that ordered view controllers array. To do page control dot current page equals 0. Then do page control dot tint color equals UI color dot black. Page control dot page indicator tint color equals UI color dot white, and you'll see all this working in a moment. The page control dot current page indicator tint color equals UI color dot black. Finally, self dot view dot add subview, and the view is going to be page control. Now finally, in view did load, we need to add self dot delegate equals self, and under that we'll add configure page control, because we need to set up the UI page control delegate function, and we'll set it up under here. It's going to be function page view controller, and it's going to be this transition completed function here, which also has did finish animating. And what we want to place in here is do let page content view controller equals page view controller dot view controllers exclamation mark at position 0 to self dot page control dot current page equals ordered view controllers dot index, and the of is going to be page content view controller. Close that off and use the exclamation mark. So let's run that to see our page indicators, and I'll quickly touch on the code that controls that. Okay, so we can see we have our page indicators down the bottom. We have 2 pages. If we go to the second page, the current selected one is indicated by the black indicator. We go back to the first page and that changes. So that's how you add the UI page control indicators. So what happens is first of all we configure the settings for it, which you can have a play around with the colors here, see what they affect. It gets placed at the bottom of the screen with this CG rect frame. And what happens is every time you change the page view controller delegate function here gets called whenever the transition gets completed for moving to the next page. And essentially we set the page control .current page to be the index of the page content view controller in ordered view controllers. So this basically grabs the index of the page we've got selected, and then we find that in this ordered view controllers list here, and we set the current page to be that value. So that's how our page view controller works in Swift, and you can download the source code for this below. Don't forget to subscribe and also like this if you enjoyed the tutorial.